Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever this finds you. I want to welcome you to Mornings with the Murph, episode 1. I am your host, John Murphy, coming to you live. Actually, that's a lie. Not live at all, pre-recorded, but coming to you Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. At the very least, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And just to be simple, this is a sports talk show where I'm going to talk about anything I want in the world of sports. You might know me for my coverage with the Detroit Pistons in the NBA, and that's actually where we're going to start today because I want to talk about the Kyrie Irving trade request and eventual trade to the Dallas Mavericks. Also, a little bit later in the show, I want to talk about the Super Bowl, the matchup specifically between the Eagles and Patrick Mahomes, and specifically what stands out to me about this Super Bowl versus others in the past. But first, be sure you like this video and subscribe down below so you don't miss more episodes of Mornings with the Murph, as well as other content that will be coming on this channel. But with that, let's get started with Kyrie Irving. What the hell? So, Kyrie Irving, after multiple months, or should I say multiple years of insubordinates, and it's quite frankly been a long time since Kyrie Irving's won an NBA championship. 2016, in fact. So 7 years. And in his time in Brooklyn, Kyrie Irving won exactly one playoff series. He missed over 130 games. And now, towards the end of his tenure, when he's finally playing good basketball, coming back after, of course, he was suspended for tweeting out an anti-Semitic documentary that, he clearly didn't watch beforehand, but that's a whole other conversation we can have at a different time. He comes out, is good enough to be named the all-star starting guard in the Eastern Conference, showing you exactly what a focused, determined Kyrie Irving can be. A Kyrie Irving whose sole focus is the game of basketball. And all of a sudden, Kyrie Irving walks up to Joe Tsai in the Brooklyn Nets ownership group and says, I want out. You should trade me before the deadline because I'm walking in free agency if you don't. And obviously the reason why this all broke down was because the Brooklyn Nets were not keen on giving Kyrie Irving a long-term extension for max dollars. On Kyrie Irving's camp, there's this questioning of why would a player of my stature, of my ability, have to agree to such sanctions or such things in my contract that would prevent me from getting my money? I'm Kyrie. I put up numbers. I'm one of the best in the world. You should be thankful I want to play here. And that, of course, is if you have the opinion of Kyrie Irving, which, of course, is completely removed from all reality and all sense. And the reality of it is, Kyrie Irving coming to the Nets and quitting on Kevin Durant, by the way, is all the proof in the world that Kevin Durant should have stayed in Golden State. I know this is a point that has been exhausted and has been talked about for years. We all know that Kevin Durant leaving Golden State Warriors is one of the biggest mistakes that he's made, both in his life and in his basketball career. However, that's done. But the fact that Kyrie Irving, after Kevin Durant came back, of course, he requested a trade at one point in the summer, but he said, you know what? I'm going to come back. I'm going to commit to this season. I'm going to continue to commit to Kyrie. I'm going to still support him. He's still my guy. And Kyrie turns right around and says, I appreciate it, man. I want out. I'm going to ruin this entire season for your team. Potentially jeopardize any hopes that Brooklyn has for competitive basketball going forward. I'm just going to throw that in the air just because I want to. That is quintessential Kyrie Irving. And just when you thought that maybe he was getting his behavior on the right track, when people were like, no, Kyrie, he gets it. He understands what he needs to do in order to lock up that long-term money. And quite frankly, it was sounding like it was heading in a direction where he actually could have asked for that reasonably. If he kept playing well, if the Nets went deep in the playoffs, made something happen with him and Kevin Durant, Joe Tsai would probably be way more keen to have you around for more years. But instead, Kyrie pulls this. And reportedly, because of this action and because of this request, the Nets say, you know what, Kyrie? We're going to trade you. We're going to do it. But you know what? We are not giving in to any of your demands as to where you get to go. All the talk, all the conversation was how Kyrie Irving was destined to reunite with LeBron James and to team up with Anthony Davis to form the NBA's most dangerous trio. And then Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks swoop in the 11th hour and offer a package including Spencer Dinwiddie, former Brooklyn Net that, they traded away in the James Harden deal that they probably shouldn't have traded away in the James Harden deal. That guy, he's a Brooklyn Net as well. But all first reported and broke by Shams Charania, the entire package of the Kyrie Irving trade was reportedly Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks for Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a first-round pick, and multiple second-round picks. So first of all, Dorian Finney-Smith, if you don't know, one of the best role players in the NBA, one of the best wings as far as a 3-and-D wing, guy who can guard multiple positions, a guy who plays his role, a guy that you want alongside your superstar. That's Dorian Finney-Smith. We heard reports last week that the Mavericks would reportedly part with Dorian Finney-Smith if it would get them a star in return. And everyone thought, well, that's crazy. What star would you get in return for that? Well, we found out it's Kyrie Irving. And my first thought is where everyone else's first thought goes when they saw this trade go through, which is, of course, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic have potential to be a firepower on the offensive end. Everything that they can accomplish together as far as on the offensive end of the basketball, these are two of the best players to ever put a ball in their hands. These are two savants of the game. These are two guys who have elite handles, elite playmaking, elite scoring. These are two guys who are that guy. And Luka Doncic has shown repeatedly, almost ever since he's come into the league, that he was almost immediately a top 5 player in this league. This is a guy who's essentially, for all intents and purposes, seeming to take LeBron's throne, or the next coming of LeBron, or the closest thing we're going to get to it as far as how he can dominate and control a game. I mean, especially for how young he is, it's insane. But on paper, those two together are dangerous. And then you look at the potential lineup that you could have in Dallas now with Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, Tim Hardaway Jr., Christian Wood, and Dwight Powell. And on paper, that's a pretty interesting lineup. There's a lot of things to like about it. I think, especially with Christian Wood being able to finally step into the starting lineup, to take that responsibility that he's been asking for from the beginning of the season. Well, now he's going to get that chance. And now he's going to be able to do it with 2 stars. This will be the chance that Christian Wood has been waiting for in his career. However, and this is exactly where I want to turn the conversation and transition, because this is the same trap we have been falling into with Kyrie Irving for years now. And the reality of it is, basketball is not played on paper. With Kyrie Irving, no matter what, you have to expect at some point he is going to cause chaos. At some point, whether he means to or not, he is going to cause a ripple within that organization. And I'm not assuming here. I'm going off of a track record. And I'm of the opinion that when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And Kyrie Irving, over and over and over again, has shown the Brooklyn Nets who he is. He's shown Kevin Durant who he is. He's shown every other owner in the National Basketball Association exactly who he is. You want to ask about the Kyrie Irving experience? Go to Cleveland. They'll tell you about it. Want to hear a little bit more? You think I'm joking? Ask Boston about their time with Kyrie Irving. Because sure, there's a lot of players that adore Kyrie. But we don't get to hear from front office and executives and coaching staffs about those things. And all the rumblings and whisperings and everything about that is that Kyrie is not exactly a walk in the park. And so, coming into Dallas, coming into the situation where he's going to have to defer to Luka Doncic, which he's deferred to Kevin Durant. He's deferred to LeBron James. Kyrie Irving is the type of guy where he will more than gladly defer to a teammate if he respects said teammate. If there's any guy you're going to respect in this league, it's Luka Doncic. So from that standpoint, it makes sense from a basketball fit. And if these guys can just focus in the rest of this season, Kyrie Irving from here on out just focuses on basketball, then maybe they can do something. But the entire reason why Kyrie Irving wanted out, asked for this trade, made this happen in the first place, was because Kyrie Irving wanted long-term assurance. He wanted an extension. He wanted contract. And from current reports from the likes of Mark Stein, Dallas is tentatively treating this as a sort of rental. And if you are in the business of getting rentals alongside Luka Doncic, I think that is an incredibly dangerous business to be in, especially when during that process, you're giving up valuable pieces like draft capital, which you didn't have much of to begin with because of the other whiffed trades you had, like the Kristaps Porzingis trade. You remember that swing that you guys took? Or how about the fact that you don't have much cap space? The fact that now Kyrie Irving comes in, and sure, maybe if Kyrie leaves, that's the argument you can make of now we have cap space to come bring somebody to come play alongside Luka Doncic. Can you name me again that big name free agent the Dallas Mavericks got? Oh yeah, DeAndre Jordan, except wait, my bad. That's right. He reneged two days later and went back to the Clippers. But he did come back a couple years later, but he was way out of his prime and he was traded. But we don't talk about that. Like the ultimate thing, I think the Dallas Mavericks are in real danger to become the Green Bay Packers of the NBA. Now you might be thinking, Sean, what in the world do you mean by that? Well, the Green Bay Packers, as we all know, over the past 20 plus years have been blessed, 30 years, have been blessed with two of the greatest quarterback talents to ever live. In Brett Favre, who, by the way, we do not stand for Brett Favre. This is a Brett Favre show, unapologetically. I mean, if you want to know why, Google Brett Favre and Google fraud. Google Brett Favre fraud and see what he did to the state of Mississippi. That will tell you why we are not a Brett Favre pod. And then to also have Aaron Rodgers. Two of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks to ever live. You could make that ranking however you want. It's indisputable that these are two of the greatest quarterback talents that ever lived. And Green Bay only got 2 championships out of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Unless Aaron Rodgers somehow comes back another year in Green Bay and magically leads them on a Super Bowl run, which all signs point to Aaron Rodgers not really being able to lead Green Bay to a Super Bowl run. at least in this stage of his career. At certain points, he was more than capable of doing so. But the Packers, at certain points, didn't put the right pieces around Aaron Rodgers. I mean, how many times do we talk about the fact that the Packers went years without drafting a wide receiver in the first round? And sure, he had Devontae Adams, who, once he signed his extension, was traded to the Raiders because his extension made it impossible for them to, keep Devontae Adams. Almost like, the problem they're having with Luka with the Supermax that they're paying him right now. But that's here or there. The ultimate point is, if you have in Dallas Dirk Nowitzki and Luka Doncic back to back, which Dirk Nowitzki was on the NBA 75 list, one of the 75 greatest players of all time. Luka Doncic, for all intents and purposes, he's going to be on the NBA 100 list when that comes around. These are two generational talents that have landed in Dallas. And Dirk Nowitzki's entire career can be summed up with, if only he had another guy with him. If only Steve Nash never left. If only Jason Kidd got there in his prime. If only Vince Carter was there in his prime. Dallas, when they won the championship in 2010, weren't supposed to win that championship. They were pulling off the upset. In fact, it was really the mid-2000s, 2005, 2006, 2007. That was really the peak of the Dallas Mavericks. And as good as those teams were, there just wasn't enough talent to put them over the top, to get them over the hump. Because you had in the Western Conference, you had the powers of the San Antonio Spurs, and as great as the Mavericks were as a regular season team, they couldn't match up with Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan. They couldn't match up with Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, Ron Artest. They just couldn't. And so Dallas now is in a situation where Luka Doncic signed the dotted lines. He agreed to a Supermax extension. And that extension kicked in this year. What does that mean? That means, Dallas, you're on the clock. Because at the end of this extension, Luka Doncic is an unrestricted free agent. He doesn't exactly seem like the most patient type of person as far as not getting the job done and not winning. In fact, he seemed quite frustrated over the last couple of years when they couldn't get out of the first round. Mind you, this last season was the first time he got out of the first round and got to the Western Conference Finals because Luka Doncic essentially was so dominant that he willed them to the Western Conference Finals. It wasn't because of the team that they put around him, which, by the way, the one component of that team that made that team so dominant, Jalen Brunson, they let walk to go to the Knicks because they wouldn't pay him when they had the opportunity to sign him to a significantly cheaper extension. So if Dallas thinks for some reason that this Kyrie Irving Band-Aid that they're putting on is going to, for the long term, both be the solution to the problem that's facing this Mavericks team, but also to think that this won't potentially blow up in your face in the long term, I think is flat out ignorant. I hope I'm wrong, because at one point, Kyrie Irving was one of my favorite players in not just in basketball, but just in sports. I mean, he's box office when you talk about when Kyrie Irving is on the court with the ball in his hands, fourth quarter, 5 minutes to go. He's one of the most electric players that we have in the history of this league. But damn it, if he doesn't just keep getting in his own way. I hope that this is a situation where Kyrie can maybe prove me wrong. I hope that if this is indeed a rental, that Kyrie can make the most of it and that we see Luka Doncic show what he can do with an all-star caliber player next to him. But I think we're going to see a lot of struggles with this team, especially on the defensive end, because holy this team's going to set defense back 50 years at least. I mean, Luka Doncic is not exactly the hardest playing defensive player in every single possession. I mean, granted, when you are the offense of the Dallas Mavericks, you're not exactly in the luxury to be able to play defense every single possession with 100% effort. But he's going to be in a little more pressure to do so now, especially with no Dorian Finney-Smith, because Kyrie Irving is even more of a liability than he is. I hope I'm wrong. I don't exactly think this is anything more than a first-round exit. All right, next thing I want to talk about is the Super Bowl. We're going to be talking about a whole lot about the big game this week, about big picture NFL stuff, what I specifically think about this matchup, ultimately who I think's going to win. I will be giving my prediction on Friday's version of the show. But I wanted to start today with having a little bit of an over conversation, big picture about what this game means, how these teams got here, and quite frankly, what we're going to be looking out for. Because first of all, I don't think that anyone is particularly surprised that at the end of this playoffs, that these are the two teams that were ending up facing each other. Because the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC side, from top to bottom, is the most complete roster. Jalen Hurts has been an absolute weapon. The player that he's been able to develop into under this Nick Sirianni offense and everything that he's been able to do in Philadelphia ever since taking over the job and being looked at as a laughingstock from his very first press conference, now in his second year leading this team to a Super Bowl. That's incredibly impressive. But it's also not particularly surprising when you look at the roster that they have from top down, because they just have guys on the interior that can smash. They have incredible corners. Their pass protection is incredible. Everything about this team from top to bottom screams Super Bowl roster. Quite frankly, I came into this year a little bit confused as to how they were in that conversation. And then I watched them play and it was like, holy no, this team's for real. And specifically what really makes this team terrifying is what they can do on the defensive end. I mean, good Lord, their pass rush. In particular, the fact, like, the poor 49ers, who, by the way, they were one of my picks at the beginning of the year. They were my favorite personally to win it all. However, that, of course, went out the window when they went through not one, not two, not three, but 4 different quarterback injuries this year. I mean, the fact that they had a 4th-string emergency quarterback on the roster that had to come in and play in the NFC Championship game, who then had to come out and be replaced by the guy who was injured in the first place, Brock Purdy. And by the way, the fact that, completely torn UCL, the fact that he was completely separate, separate from, his elbow is essentially separate from his body, like there was a complete tear there. There was no throwing that ball from Brock Purdy at all. He only tried it twice in the second half, and you could tell that there was nothing that he could do. But overall, on the NFC side of things, this team was dominant from the beginning of the year. And now, for them to be in this position, to be one of the best teams on both sides of the ball, to have this dominant rushing attack, to have 2 elite wideouts on the outside for Jalen Hurts to utilize, solid Miles Sanders running attack. This team has everything they need to get over the top. The only problem is they're facing the final boss of the NFL, that being Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not a secret how amazing Patrick Mahomes is. We all know Tom Brady's the GOAT, but in my opinion, I don't think it's disputable that Patrick Mahomes might be the greatest quarterback talent to ever live. I mean, from the physical intangibles that we saw from his very first season, just the arm and his athleticism, but also the mental intangibles that it takes to be elite at the quarterback position, to process information, to be able to give commands, to be able to quickly get rid of the ball, to not make mistakes in high pressure situations. I mean, there might not be someone that fits that description more than Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that he was able to this season, when everyone was writing the narrative, oh, well, Patrick Mahomes coming off of one of his worst seasons ever, now losing Tyreek Hill, he's not going to be able to do anything. They're not going to be able to go anywhere. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to slip this season. And what do? They go 14-3. They show up their defense. Their offensive line looks significantly improved. For the first time in a while, Kansas City Chiefs actually have a remnants of a running attack. Even though they don't have that one dominant wideout, that threat on the outside like Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, was an MVP candidate in his own right this past season, and the way that he was able to elevate the Miami Dolphins. But at the same time, it showcased the greatness of Patrick Mahomes, but also the excellence of Andy Reid, the importance of Andy Reid. We all know that the biggest threat that can face Patrick Mahomes on a given day-to-day basis is a dominant pass rush. We talk about guys like Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick. This Philadelphia Eagles defense is downright dangerous. We saw it just this last week, how they were able to get to the quarterback, affect things, completely change the entire course and trajectory of the game. And we saw in the Super Bowl in the past what happened when the Kansas City Chiefs were not able to protect Patrick Mahomes. So I think Andy Reid is very conscious of that going into this game. And I imagine, especially after what happened to them against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the last time they made it to this game, I think they're going to be especially motivated to make sure that they can protect Patrick Mahomes, that they can get rid of the ball. And especially when both quarterbacks are coming in injured and Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain, you need to do everything in your power to make sure that he's going to be able to stay stationary throughout the entire game. I mean, we've seen Patrick Mahomes has all-time pain tolerance. We've seen that he's able to fight through injuries, but damn it if you don't want to make that thing worse so that he can get that ball wherever he needs to at any given time. And not only does this Eagles team have a pretty damn good pass rush, this is a team that's approaching the 84 Bears, where we're talking about statistics. As of January 7th, this team had 68 sacks. And the fact that they're being mentioned in the same breath as the 84 Bears tells you everything that you need to know. That's enough about the big game for now. We're going to be talking about it much more on Wednesday and Friday. But there's another aspect of the big game that makes this stand out to me in particular. And it's that for the first time in my life, as a Lions fan, I can see a foreseeable path for this team to be playing in this game. I mean, let's look at the tail of the tape just over the last couple of years alone. I mean, after the disastrous run of the Quintricia era, after, the Matt Millen era, after everything that we've had to go through and endure as Lions fans, to end up with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and the change in the culture and the vision that they've brought to this team, but also the fact that we have a transition in ownership in Sheila Ford Hemp and an understanding that there needs to be a change in the way that things have been done in Detroit. historically speaking, Detroit has gone with people that they know, people that they like. With the Quinn Trisha era, they went with the they tried to recreate the New England Patriots in Detroit. And we've all seen over and over again, you cannot recreate the New England Patriots in your organization. If you're just going for a carbon copy of what's been done before, it's just not going to work. And the fact that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have come in and said, we're building a team that embodies this city. And the fact that they've been able to do that from day one, and not only build a team that embodies and embraces the culture of what it means to be in Detroit, and the fact that, the roster construction and everything about how this team plays fits Detroit. I mean, this team is gritty as hell. They grind for every little thing. And even though they started out really bad on the defensive end, really bad all around, they clawed, scratched, and fought like hell till the end of the season, where they should have made the playoffs. They defeated the Green Bay Packers on their final game of the season in Lambeau. Mind you, after the Seattle Seahawks defeated the Rams at home due to a wrongful roughing the kicker penalty that was called on the Los Angeles Rams, which has been called by numerous people throughout the NFL a tragedy, in that Detroit should be upset. The fact that this Detroit Lions team is being spoken of in that regard. And it's because of what they have in-house. It's because of guys like Penei Sewell, which I know we all look at the photo of Penei Sewell, diving in air to catch that ball, and the hilariousness of that play, hilarity of the fact that an offensive lineman was put out to be a receiver. But the fact that Penei Sewell is that damn good and athletic to where he was able to cause separation and actually execute that play, but also the fact that we potentially got a Hall of Fame level talent on the offensive line in our very first year of the rebuild. And an offensive line, mind you, that wasn't inherently broken. I mean, this was a part of our team that, yes, we needed to shore out more of. I mean, if you want to win in this league, you need to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And that's something that they've made very clear since day one. But the fact that they were able to get a guy like Sewell who understands what it means to control that line, but also understands what it means to play with grit, to not come from the most glamorous of situations. And the fact that he's been able to thrive and, quite frankly, be all pro by year 2, more than hold his own in numerous situations. And in particular, I think of when he had to play against Aaron Donald in his rookie year and how he actually was able to relatively handle Aaron Donald as well as a rookie can, mind you. But this is a guy that we're talking about how he could only count on one hand the amount of sacks that he gave up in college. To have that guy protecting Jared Goff or whoever's going to be under center for the Lions going forward, that makes me feel comfortable. But then you talk about the wealth of talent that Brad Holmes was able to find this past offseason, particularly on the edge, with guys, not one, not two, but 3 different pass rushers, with Aiden Hutchinson at the number 2 overall pick, which I'm a Michigan man. I'm a Michigan fan, unapologetically. I wanted Aiden Hutchinson the second he declared for the draft. And the fact that he was everything and more than I thought he could be in his rookie season. I mean, the fact that he got more interceptions than Sauce Gardner. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, first of all, the athlete that he is, we all know, and we've seen that from his time in Michigan, and we've seen that he's able to get around the edge. You're not going number 2 overall if you're not a freak athlete, right? How smart is Aiden Hutchinson as a football player? I mean, obviously, he went to Michigan. If you're going to Michigan, you're smart too, right? But the fact that he was able to be deployed and used in the secondary, the fact that he's able to essentially be this Swiss Army knife for the Detroit Lions, very similar to what you see out of other superstars in the NFL. You know, I think of Micah Parsons for the Dallas Mavericks. I think of Micah Parsons for the Dallas Cowboys and everything that he's been able to do, how he's deployed at every single part of the field and how he's affecting every area of the defense. If Aiden Hutchinson can even scratch that type of impact for Detroit, we're in great shape. But also the fact that he has other guys alongside him, like Josh Pascal, who was dealing with a lot of injuries to start his season, but as he was getting going towards the end, was starting to get going, got a couple sacks, showed the potential that he had, and showed why, according to Pro Football Focus, he was the highest graded edge rusher in this past draft class. But then, as if that wasn't enough, Brad Holmes, that brilliant bastard, finds James Houston at the end of the draft. The first ever player drafted out of an HBCU, played with Coach Prime, and came in, and when he was healthy, when he made his debut, made history. And I mean, the fact that this guy was able to come into his first game, you know, sack Josh Allen twice and show the type of impact and ferocity and athleticism that he had. The fact that this was someone that was on the practice squad at one point and worked his way up and showed how dominant he was and how dominant he can be. I mean, if that wasn't enough, getting Malcolm Rodriguez in the 6th round. Rodrigo, a guy that we all laugh about. We make good laughs about. He even appeared at my former network. I worked at Woodward Sports, appeared a couple times. Seems like a really fun guy, a guy that we were all rooting for, but truth be told, we didn't really know the type of impact that he could have in the NFL. I mean, we knew he was a captain at Oklahoma State, that he was one of the better, outside linebackers in the country, but the fact that he was able to immediately wow the defensive staff, the entire coaching staff, but also make an impact from day one in games, make big plays, show his sneaky athleticism, but also earn him a spot on this roster going forward. We talked about how badly the Detroit Lions needed to shore up their defense over the next couple of years. It seems like they might be at least a year ahead in that department. And now that they have not one but 2 first-round picks, and they can go and address multiple holes on that side of the ball, become that much better, that much more dominant, but also Ben Johnson comes back. DeAndre Swift gets healthy this offseason, but also you get to add Jamison Williams alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you have potentially one of the most dangerous young cores in the NFL. And at first I was fretting about the fact that we have Jared Goff, and even though Jared Goff just had a Pro Bowl caliber season, showed everything that he could do when given the tools around him, I'm still curious to see what Jared Goff does in a playoff setting when the pressure's on, when the lights are bright, when he has to make the play to put Detroit over the top. But also, I think if you look at history and you especially look around the league, there's not necessarily something wrong with having a transition quarterback or having a bridge quarterback while you're building the structure of your program, of your organization, of what you want to be going forward. And if Jared Goff can help us consistently win games and over the course of the next few seasons, even win some division championships for the Lions, then that's a massive success. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure out something at some point to make sure that that position isn't preventing them from getting over the top. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers, we just talked about, they have everything they need to win a Super Bowl. They have the coach. They have the players. They have the staff. They have the ownership. Their defense is one of the greatest defenses of all time. Their offense, they got Christian McCaffrey at the trade deadline, one of the best running backs in the NFL, to already aid one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. You got Deebo Samuel, who's a freaking weapon. But they can't get over the top because they ultimately still don't know who's going to do it for them at quarterback. If as long as they don't end up in that situation, but rather a Kansas City type of situation where you have a guy like Alex Smith who can more than hold his own in that sense of playing good football, of not turning over the football, of getting you into the playoffs, of actually winning you division championships. But then they were able to go take the swing on Patrick Mahomes, take their franchise to the next level. I'm not saying that that's automatically going to happen or that Patrick Mahomes or guys like Patrick Mahomes are just going to fall into your lap every single draft. But the point is, they built a good program. They won a lot of games. And when they eventually found the quarterback that they wanted to take the leap on, they did it. And if Brad Holmes does that exact same thing, win some games with Jared Goff right now, build a really solid foundation for yourself on both sides of the football, get yourself some guys that can help Jared Goff, get some guys that can help Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston, get some guys in the secondary that can help maybe cause some turnovers. I mean, you're already cooking with fire here. And I mean, the fact that potentially Detroit could, over the next few seasons, potentially make a swing at quarterback or make a swing in general, make this team that much more competitive. I'm just saying, man, Brad Holmes has already shown what he's been able to do in the draft. Imagine what he's going to be able to do now that he's going to have cap space. That is terrifying. And that is going to do it today for the first episode of Mornings with the Murph. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, but also be sure you share with your friends. And also be sure that you're here on Wednesday at 10 a.m. to tune in for more of Mornings with the Murph. You can also catch me on From Half Court each and every day, Monday through Friday, doing all things NBA content. Subscribe over there as well. But with that, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys Wednesday for Mornings with the Murph.